Śrī Caitanya Kripābharo Bhuvi Bhuva Varabhahantārakam Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghujagam Śrī Jīva Gosvāmī Śrī Gauranga Gunānutanana Vidhau Tadhyāsamidhārnitam Pāpatāpanikantanam Tanamhitam Govinda Ganāmritayi Śrī Gauranga Gunānutanana Vidhau Tadhyāsamidhārnitam Pāpatāpanikantanam Tanamhitam Govindaganamritayi Anandamrudivarthanayi Kanipanam Kaivallanisvarakam Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghujagam
Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Adunulambito Bujo Kanakabhatatu Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gurudaya Pushpavanto Chitra Sangdo Tamuno Vandeham Śrī Rāma Krishna Abhayo Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye.
Shri Gaudiya Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai, Śrī Jīva Gosvāmī Ki Jai, Sat Sandarbhas Ki Jai, Anantakota Vaishnavind Ki Jai. Glorious devotees, thank you so much for attending another discussion on Śrīla Jīva Gosvāmī's Sat Sandarbhas. We'll continue today from the beginning of the Kṛṣṇa Sandarbha, wherein Jiva Gosvāmī systematically goes through the incarnations as listed in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, wherein Sutta Goswami is responding to the request of the sages in regards to those avataric descents of the Supreme Lord. So we've gone through a few of them, and we will continue where we left off with the 20th Anucheta and also the 20th verse of that 3rd chapter of the 1st canto. In his 16th avatar, the Purusha became furious on seeing that the kings were inimical to the Brahmanas, and so rid the earth of the warrior clans 21 times. Jiva writes the word avatārī, literally in the avatar, here refers to the one named Śrī Parasuram. Short commentary here, the story of Parashuram is found in the 15th and 16th chapters of the 9th canto. This narration shows how Bhagavan offers protection to cows and brahmanas, curbing those who oppose such culture. Twenty-first Anucheda. Thereafter, in his 17th avatar, he was born from Satyavati through the sage Parasara. Recognizing that people in general were diminished in their powers of understanding, he divided the tree of the Veda into many branches. The meaning is self-evident, and of course, here we're speaking of Kṛṣṇa Dvaipayana Vyas. Just some mention needs to be made that Kṛṣṇa Dvaipayana Vyas is seen as an actual manifestation of Bhagavan Śrī Kṛṣṇa himself as Bhagavan, whereas sometimes the Vyas of a particular yuga cycle will be an empowered representative of the Supreme Lord. But uniquely enough, in this particular day of Brahma, in this particular Manvantara, the same Manvantara wherein Krishna himself descends personally, the same Manvantara wherein Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes his advent, and the same Manvantara as in that same Manvantara, the Vyas is also Bhagavan himself. Commentary here. This is the avatar of Badarayana, properly known as Vyas. He divided the one Veda into 4 for easy comprehension and taught it to 4 of his students. He is also the author of the Bhagavat Purana, which, according to Jiva Gosvāmī, is eternal like the Veda. The story of Vyas's birth is found in Mahabharata, Adi Parva, chapter 57 of the critical edition. The next verse of the Bhagavatam reads, thereafter in the 18th avatar, he appeared as a king, intending to accomplish the work of the Suras and performed heroic acts such as restraining the ocean. Jiva writes in this regard, appearing as a king, Naradevavam, literally as a deva or god among men, means that he assumed the form of Sri Rāma, Ataparam. Thereafter means in the 18th avatar. It is understood from the Rāma Gita of the Skanda Purana that Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra prayed to Sri Ram, the Purusha himself, while he manifested his universal form. Little commentary here. The work of the Suras means killing Ravana, who was terrorizing them. Bhagavan Ram built a bridge over the Indian Ocean to reach Sri Lanka and rescue his wife Sita, who had been kidnapped by Ravana. The remnants of this bridge were discovered recently under the ocean between India and Sri Lanka. The Ramayana of Valmiki is one of the most popular scriptures of India and has exerted an influence on the culture of many Southeast Asian countries. Although Ram is counted among the avatars, according to Śrī Jīva, he is the Purusha himself. As evidence of this, he refers to Ram's manifesting the universal form of the Purusha, on which occasion the gods, including Vishnu, offered prayers to him. Now we come to the 23rd Anucheda. In the 19th and 20th avatars, Bhagavan took birth, appeared among the Vrishnis as Balaram and Krishna, and rid the earth of her burden. Jiva writes here, the word Bhagavan in this verse has been employed in a special sense to assert that these two are directly the manifestation of Śrī Bhagavan himself, and not of the Purusha called Aniruddha. In this regard, the function of removing the burden of the earth is effected by Bhagavan alone, both through his direct form as Śrī Kṛṣṇa, as well as through his own plenary portion as Śrī Balaram. Therefore, the clause Bhagavan rid the earth of her burden is applied to both of them. On this account, the view that Balaram too is an avatar of Aniruddha is refuted, since Śrī Kṛṣṇa is Vasudeva and Śrī Balaram is Sankirtan. This refutation is certainly appropriate. So much to speak in regards to Krishna and Balaram, but we will hold that off until Jiva brings it up himself as we proceed in the Kṛṣṇa Sandarbha. So all this is coming up to that one key verse wherein we enter deeply into the Kṛṣṇa Sandarbha, Kṛṣṇastu Bhagavan Svayam. So Jīva Gosvāmī is laying a firm foundation here based on what's presented in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in relationship to the avatāric descents of divinity. And once we get to that Parivas Sutra, which is the key to the Gaudiya understanding of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, then the whole world will open up through the lens of Jīva Gosvāmī into our Sampradaya's understanding of the standing of Krishna and his being the source or the avatārī of all these various manifestations who are coming through the agency of the Purusha. Of course, here, the exceptions made, Krishna and Balaram are not coming through that agency. They are descending directly. As we shall see further, the word Bhagavan employed in this verse has special significance. This word has not been used to refer to any of the other avatars listed before or after. This indicates that Krishna and Balaram are not avatars of the Purusha, contrary to what was stated in general terms in verse 135. Rather, they are the self-same Bhagavan himself. It will be established definitively in Anucheta 28 that Śrī Kṛṣṇa is the original or source form of Bhagavan. All other avatars or forms of God are directly or indirectly manifestations of him alone. Balaram is Krishna's brother and first expansion. Therefore, he too is not an avatar of the Purusha. Among the quadruple expansion, Chaturvyuha, Krishna is Vasudeva and Balaram is Sankirtan. Sankirtan expands as Mahavishnu or Karnadakshay Vishnu, from whom arise the other Purusha forms. Consequently, it is incorrect to claim that Balaram is a manifestation of Aniruddha, since the reverse evidently seem to be the case. That Pradyumna and Aniruddha manifest from Sankirtan is affirmed by Bhishma. This is from the Mahabharata, Santi Parva. From Sankirtan appeared Pradyumna, who is known as the aggregate mind. From Pradyumna came Aniruddha, who is the presiding deity of Ahankar and the supreme eminent self, Ishvara. Jiva writes, thereafter, when Kali is underway, he will appear in Kikata as Buddha, the son of Anjana, for the purpose of deluding the enemies of the Suras. Kikateshu means in the land of Gaya. Very interesting commentary here. This verse predicts Buddha's appearance. The name of Buddha's mother, however, is given in the verse. As given in the verse, does not match that of the historical Buddha's mother. According to the Buddhist tradition, Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, was born to Maya Devi, wife of King Suddhodana, the ruler of the Sakya clan in Lumbini, currently in Nepal. Kikata is the area of Gaya in the state of Bihar, India. Moreover, the verse says that Buddha will come to delude the enemies of the Suras. None of the things stated in the verse seem to match the actual facts related to the historical Buddha as we know him today. Then the commentary continues. The word Anjana, however, can be considered a synonym of Maya, since in Vedic terminology, the word is used for upadhi, a designation superimposed on the self, which is part of Maya. Gaya is not very far from Buddha's birthplace, Lumbini, and thus Kikata may actually be a reference to it. It is believed that in Kali Yuga, the present age, many asuras would take birth among the Brahmanas and thus pollute the teachings of the Veda. It is indeed a historical fact that during the time of Buddha, people had taken to killing animals for eating meat on the pretext of performing Vedic yajna. This is stated even in the Mahabharata. In that yuga, Treta, the animals will be sanctified by sprinkling holy water and then killed in sacrifice. Dharma will diminish by 1/4. Witnessing this degradation of the people and Vedic Dharma, Buddha preached to them to give up the Vedas and follow the path of nonviolence. Thus, it can be said that Buddha misled the asuras born as Brahmanas so that they could be weaned away from the Vedas and the corruption that had set in. One thing we might want to consider in this regard is the gradual theistic evolution that happened historically after the advent of the Buddha as we see him in our historical context. So if we see him in that historical context, then reconciling his appearance with that theistic evolution, he does fit into our history accordingly, especially in regards to what's stated here in the Mahabharata, what he accomplished, the way that he weaned the general population off of the performance of animal sacrifice simply for satisfaction of their senses. Because after his advent, we had Sankaracharya coming in and gradually taking the same concept that Buddha had presented, that concept of nonviolence, and of course, the objective of Buddhism in general is the attainment of a state of nirvana, or a complete shutting off of material entanglement through a complete practice, which involves seeing that we have no position at all within the material realm. Of course, Buddha did not go on from that to also explain more what actually is. So his approach is more give everything up, that it is entering into nirvana is actually entering into a stage of complete and absolute nothingness. Now, Sankaracharya comes along. He gives his own interpretation of the Vedas, not bringing out all the essence of Vedic knowledge, which is the personality of divinity, but rather he focuses in his presentation of theology on the fact that everybody should also give up material involvement, but they should seek as an objective their source, which is Brahman. So in Brahman, we have a likeness of ourselves with the totality of spiritual existence. Of course, a spiritual existence that lacks qualities and characteristics, and all that Brahman lacks is what Sankaracharya emphasized. And he only in a very hidden way did he reveal Bhaja Govinda, to worship Govinda. All you fools that think that what I'm giving you is the absolute truth, you need to know what the real truth is. It's beyond the perversion of the Vedas that I've put forth under the direction of the Supreme Lord himself. So Sankaracharya being a descent of Lord Shiva for that particular purpose. And then following Sankaracharya, we come to Ramanujacharya, who now brings back in personality to the idea of the topmost theistic ideal, and followed by Madhvacharya, ultimately up to the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Kali Yuga, giving us the topmost understanding of divinity in a very exceptional way, extraordinary way. So in that regard, just a few words to allow us to see Buddha as the verse from the Bhagavatam in the context of our history, a little bit beyond what's been presented here just in the commentary, showing the particulars, but also in the context of his advent. It also seems to ring true to what Sutta Goswāmī presented to the sages. We come up to the 25th Anucheta, 25th verse of the 3rd chapter. Then, at the conjunction of the yugas, when the kings have mostly become robbers, the Lord of the universe will take birth from Viṣṇu Yasa as Kalki. Jiva writes here, at the conjunction of the yugas means at the end of Kali Yuga. Little commentary, this verse predicts the final avatar who will appear toward the end of the age of Kali. The duration of Kali is said to be 432,000 years, of which only about 5,200 have passed. That's something that's kind of hard to wrap your conception of things around, at least for me, that only 5,200 years of a 432,000 year duration of time, Kali Yuga, have actually gone by. And already anyone in human society has to be fearful for the totality of humanity, even at this early stage of Kali Yuga. It seems that how can it last another 432,000 years? How will the planet even endure that long at the rate of our destructive nature? The beginning part of a yuga is called Amsa, and the final part, Sanja. Both take up to 10% of the entire duration of the yuga. In the case of Kali, the Sanja would thus last about 43,000 years. So, assuming that the time already elapsed is indeed 5,200 years, Kalki is to appear in about 383,600 years. Although most New Age spiritualists believe that we are in the Aquarian period and that the world is about to embrace a wider spirituality, this verse seems to indicate that things are moving in the opposite direction. In descriptions of Kali Yuga, such as those found in the second chapter of the 12th canto, kings or rulers will be nothing more than legalized robbers, extracting exorbitant taxes in exchange for just a few basic services. An interesting idea to consider, however, that could harmonize to a certain degree the modern view with that of tradition, is that evolution and devolution are two streams that run concurrently. Taking the four yugas together as a closed set, devolution occurs from Satya Yuga to Kali. But as we approach the juncture between Kali and the succeeding Satya Yuga, there would necessarily have to be a growing number of people whose consciousness is sufficiently evolved to usher in the new age. From this perspective, it is not unreasonable to posit an evolutionary counter-current within Kali Yuga that prepares the way for the next Satya Yuga. From Satya to Kali, devolution is certainly evident, but from the end of Kali to the next Satya Yuga, evolution must be admitted to be the case. As the juncture point of Kali and Satya is approached, it will be marked by an increasingly acute contention between the forces of light and dark. Kalki resolves the conflict. So may the force be with us as we go through this period. Interesting perspective here put forth by Satyanarayan Das. Something to contemplate when we look at this period of Kali that we are in and the upcoming period of Satya Yuga, where everybody's in spiritual trance, focused on the Supreme Lord, so much so that there's everything is perfectional in Satya Yuga. Interesting also to keep in mind that these four yuga cycles and the timing of them, that Kali Yuga is 1/10 of the duration, and then they time-wise they expand accordingly. So you have Satya Yuga, which is basically equivalent to four Kali Yugas in duration. Then Treta Yuga, or is it Dwarpa? I can't remember which comes next, but anyway, Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali Yuga, each being diminished. So if you add them all up, you have the full duration of one yuga cycle, which is 4,320,000 years. So 10 times the duration of Kali Yuga. Then Sutta Goswami speaks in general terms about all the avatars that were not specifically mentioned in his discourse. Now, in order to include all the other avatars not listed above, such as Harigriva, Hari, Hamsa, Prishnigarbha, Vibhu, Satyasena, Vaikuntha, Arjita, Sarvabhauma, Visvaksena, Dharmasetu, Sudama, Yogeshwar, Brihadbhanu, Sukla, and others, Sri Sutta says, O Dvijas, again, he's speaking to the Brahmanas in the assembly, just as thousands of streams flow from an inexhaustible lake, so also there are countless avatars of Bhagavan Hari, who is the repository of sattva. The avatars of Bhagavan, Jiva writes, the avatars of Bhagavan Hari are countless, existing in the thousands, sahasrasha. The emphatic particle, he, indicates that this is a well-known fact. The avatars are countless because he indeed is sattva nidhi, the treasury, nidhi, of the potency of self-manifestation, sattva. An illustration of this is provided in the second part of the verse, beginning with yatha. From an inexhaustible lake appear thousands of inexhaustible streams or currents, born of the very same nature, tat swabhava krita. He continues, among all the avatars listed above, those that are partial manifestations, Hamsa avatars, are to be distinguished as follows. Now it gets into a little bit of the tattva related to these various manifestations of Bhagavan's potencies. In those like the Kumars and Narada, who are invested with a particular authority, adhikarika, there is an influx of a portion of Bhagavan's potencies, such as Gyan in the case of Kumars and Bhakti in the case of Narada. In Prithu and others like him, there is an influx of a portion of Bhagavan's potency of dynamic action, Kriya Shakti. Sometimes, however, Bhagavan himself enters into a jiva. This can be understood because such Avaisha avatars proclaim, I am indeed Bhagavan. So in this whole listing of avatars, we can see that Sutta Goswami is also included empowered jivas who have been given a specific potency of Bhagavan so that they can assist humanity. So the examples are here given by Jiva, Gyan for the Kumars, and Bhakti for Narada, who's constantly traveling throughout the planetary systems in a universe and instilling bhakti and encouraging activities in the avataric descents that bring about a rapid acceleration of the Leela in order to bring about a descent of the Lord, or to basically bring about a circumstance where the Lord displays his potency in a particular way. So both of these are included in the list of avataric descents by Sutta Goswami, the empowerment of jivas and also the avatars coming through the Purusha manifestation. And then, of course, Jiva's bringing out here that sometimes Bhagavan himself enters into a jiva. So we see sometimes a jiva, like Rishabdev, declares himself to be Bhagavan himself. Jiva Goswami continues in his 26th Anucheta. On the other hand, Sri Matsyadev and others like him are direct portions, saksad amsa of Bhagavan. In this regard, it is to be understood that the word portion, amsa, here indicates that although they are directly Bhagavan, yet because they are subordinate to his infallible will, the potency manifested by them is at all times only a singular part of his complete potency. Examples will be cited later, such as in Brahma Samhita. Bhagavan Śrī Kṛṣṇa is situated in forms such as Rāma through partial limitation of his complete power. This subject, which Jiva is introducing now regarding the gradations of the infusion of power or display of power of the various manifestations of the Supreme Lord, will come up again very soon in relation to the viewpoint of Madhvacharya. So a little preview here. Jiva Goswami is laying the groundwork for an argument that he will be making in a couple Anuchetas from now. Some commentary. Bhagavan is unlimited, and so are his avatars, manifest from the Purusha. Śrī Jīva Goswami lists some of the avatars that have not been mentioned in the Bhagavat's principal list from the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto. These are described in the 1st, 5th, and 13th chapters of the 8th canto of the Bhagavat Purana, and are summarized in the prior division, Purva Khanda, of Lagu Bhagavatamrita, under the heading of Manvantar avatars. Bhagavan is addressed here as the repository of sattva. This sattva is not one of the 3 gunas of Prakriti, but the intrinsic potency of Bhagavan, which is sometimes called Visuddha sattva to distinguish it from material sattva, or it's sometimes called Suddha sattva. So Visuddha, super empowered Suddha, and Suddha sattva, both these terminologies are referring to the Lord's spiritual potency, not to the sattva which is manifested within the material realm as one of the 3 gunas and presided over by Lord Vishnu there. As mentioned above in the commentary to Anucheta 5, there are 3 types of avatars, one of them being Avesh, referring to particular jivas who are empowered by Bhagavan to fulfill a specific task through the influx of a corresponding potency. Śrī Jīva specifies which of the avatars in the Bhagavat's list are Avesh. There are 2 types of Avesh, one being an Avesh of some particular potency of Bhagavan, and the other an Avesh of Bhagavan himself. In the second case, the avatar proclaims himself to be Bhagavan, as seen in the case of Rishabdev, as in his own words. Therefore, as long as one is bereft of love for me, Sri Vasudeva, he is certainly not delivered from identification with material embodiment. Now we go on to other manifestations of the potency of the Supreme Lord coming into the material realm for its sustenance, maintenance, and protection. Thereafter, Jiva writes, Sri Sutta describes the manifestations of lesser powers, vibhutis. Then he quotes the 27th verse from the 3rd chapter. The sages, the manus, the devas, the sons of Manu, the powerful beings, and the prajapatis are all kalas, minute portions of Sri Hari. Jiva writes in this regard, the word kala, a minute portion, means a vibhuti. When a lesser power is manifest, it is called a vibhuti. And when greater power is manifest, it is called an avesh. This is the difference between these two. So we can see that even that all of the powerful living entities, the demigods, the manus who preside over 71 cycles of yugas, 14 of such manus being in every day of Brahma, the prajapatis, the progenitors of mankind, all the great sages, they're all empowered. The sadhus, the sages, the manus, the devas, the sons of Manu, and other powerful beings they're attaining their empowerment from Sri Hari. And that empowerment is referred to as kala, meaning of a vibhuti. And it's either lesser or greater. In the lesser, it's not really distinguished. We just see powerful living entities, and we recognize that power has to be coming from the Supreme and their position in relationship to him. The greater ones, Nardas, the Kumars, they're exemplars in human society of the Lord's empowerment. Even sometimes a great devotee himself will be empowered to such an extent that he's recognized as an avesh, over and above kala, the empowerment that all the sadhus and sages have to transmit transcendental knowledge. Sometimes one is empowered specifically, and such empowerment was recognized by Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami in our spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, so much so that he said in relationship to Prabhupada's empowerment, Nityananda Avesh, that Nityananda was personally empowering him based on the extent of his outreach, and specifically that extent of his outreach going into those into the Western world, where basically there was no knowledge, deep knowledge and appreciation of the practice of bhakti, and being able to widely distribute the holy name to such an extent that I've heard an anecdote. I don't know if it's true, but Prabhupada was at a kirtan of his disciples in the Western world, and apparently he relayed this to one of his disciples afterwards, that Narada was there. He said, "Did you see Narada?" And of course, his devotee would, "No, I didn't see." Well, he said, "Yeah, I saw him, and he was very much enlivened." He said he'd never seen so many demoniac persons chanting the holy name, so many asuras, people against. So just to see that empowerment, that even the lowest in Kali Yuga are gradually turned into Krishna's devotees, that empowerment was acknowledged in Srila Prabhupada, and therefore we honor that empowerment as we honor him, and as we honor Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami for recognizing that empowerment. A little commentary here, which seemed to be significant, so we would like to read it. Besides the avatars described above, Bhagavan manifests as the various powerful beings listed in this verse for the functioning of the universe. A particular entity may be called either an avatar or a vibhuti, depending upon the magnitude of Bhagavan's potency with which they are endowed. An avesh has less power than a direct avatar. The manifestations of minute potencies are called vibhutis. It is thus possible for a jiva to be either an avesh or a vibhuti of Bhagavan. In the Gita, Krishna sums up the discussion of vibhutis in the following statement: whatsoever in existence is glorious, vibhutimat, opulent or powerful, know that indeed to be manifested from a portion of my splendor. Like the avatars, the vibhutis of Bhagavan are innumerable. Now we come to that very significant portion as we enter into an understanding of Krishna. Krishna is Svayaṁ Bhagavān. This will be dealt with in two Anuchedas, wherein the verses from Sutta Goswami will be referred to and very deeply and comprehensively elaborated upon. We will begin this deep dive into the 28th Anucheda, which has, for simplicity's sake, been divided into portions, sub-portions. As we know, the word Anucheda itself means section. So there's, I believe, 4 subsections of this 28th Anucheda in order that we can break it apart and digest all that's to be presented here by Jiva Goswami. So first, he quotes the verse from the 3rd canto. In this way, having ascertained the identity of Paramatma along with his parts, Sri Sutta now identifies Sri Bhagavan by his form akara, i.e. by the explicit display of his complete power, after summarizing what he has already stated. Then he quotes, all these are either portions, amsa, or minute portions, kalas, of the Purusha, but Krishna alone is Bhagavan himself. Jiva Goswami now begins his unpacking of this important verse. The word iti, all these, refers to the avatars previously mentioned in the verses above. The word cha, and, implies the inclusion of those avatars, etc., that have not been specifically named. So he's really pointing out the all-inclusiveness of this Paribhasa Sutra. So all the avatars that Sutta mentioned, and even the ones that he did not specifically mention, they're encompassed in in this 28th verse, which kind of brings the whole discussion to a head. All these are the amsas and kalas of the first Purusha, Pumsa, described in verse 131, the beginning of the chapter. Some are themselves portions, amsas. These are of two types: direct portions, saksad amsa, and portions of portions, amsamsa. Jiva continues. Some are portions due to being infused by other portions, whereas others are kalas, or in other words, vibhutis, displays of lesser power. Śrī Kṛṣṇa, however, who has been counted as the 20th avatar in this list, is Bhagavan. He alone is that very same Bhagavan who is the original source, avatārí, even of the Purusha. That Purusha mentioned at the beginning of the chapter. In the above verse, by the principle, the predicate should not be stated without specifying the subject. The characteristic of being Bhagavan, Bhagavata, the predicate is established as belonging specifically to Krishna, the subject, and not the reverse. That is the characteristic of being Krishna, Krishnatva. That the characteristic of being Krishna, Krishnatva, is established of Bhagavan. This will be further explained as we go on, but basically the placement of the words in the verse is very significant here. Consequently, because Śrī Kṛṣṇa alone has been determined as being the repository, dharma, of the characteristics of being Bhagavan, Bhagavatva, it is thereby proven that he is the original source, avatāri, of all avatars, and not merely a manifestation of the Purusha. Sutta expresses this very fact by the word Svayam, himself, which is to say that he is Bhagavan in and of himself, not because he has appeared from Bhagavan, nor because of the superimposition, ajasya, of godhood, Bhagavata, upon him. So some commentary in relation to this very first subsection to further elaborate on the points that Jiva Goswami is making here. Up to the 27th verse of the third chapter, Sutta Goswami listed the various avatars and partial manifestations of the Purusha, or Paramatma, forms of Bhagavan. In the present verse, after summarizing all the avatars, in the first quarter of the verse, he speaks of Bhagavan directly. This verse, along with the Vedanta verse, 1 to 11, which was discussed in the previous three books, form the foundation of Gaudiya theology. Therefore, Śrī Jīva Goswami minutely analyzes this verse in systematic fashion. So, this is very significant to our understanding. What is the foundation of Gaudiya theology? And it rests in these two verses. Vidanti tatatva vidas tatvamyas jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti Bhagavan iti subjite. And that's from the second chapter. And now in the third chapter, we have this additional verse, the Parivas Sutra, wherein we have the determining line, Krishna stu Bhagavan Svayam, in regards to all the avataric descents of divinity coming through the Purusha, and the distinguishing of Krishna from all those other manifestations of the Godhead, or empowerments of the Godhead within the material manifestation. So now we come to a very crucial understanding. The general belief held among Hindus of all sampradayas is that Śrī Kṛṣṇa is an avatar of Viṣṇu. Although Krishna, besides Lord Rāma, is one of the most popular forms of God, he is understood to be only an avatar. In light of this widespread misconception, Śrī Jīva Gosvāmī endeavors painstakingly to establish the truth and expose this erroneous view. The comprehensive meaning of the first quarter of the verse can be stated as follows. These avatars and vibhutis listed above in verses 1, 3, 6 through 27, as well as all those that are unmentioned, are either amsas or kalas of the Purusha. The second quarter of the verse forms a separate sentence. Krishna, however, is Bhagavan himself. By establishing the meaning as Krishna is Svayaṁ Bhagavān, it is concluded that only Krishna is Svayaṁ Bhagavān and no one else. Krishna alone has the intrinsic nature and qualification by which he is Svayaṁ Bhagavān. The word Svayam, in and of himself, signifies that Krishna is not an avatar of some other Bhagavan, but is Bhagavan himself. The semantics of the words will be analyzed as we go further into this Anucheda. Swayam additionally means by his very own self, and not because of any other medium or upadhi. The quality of being Bhagavan is intrinsic to his nature and not a superimposition. So this comprehensively states what to us as Gaudiyas is obvious, because the introduction of Krishna into Western society has always been couched in this wonderful statement by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead. So for us, this understanding is coming due to our repeated hearing and learning of the position of Krishna in relationship to all of his other manifestations. This is not necessarily the case in other sampradayas, and where Krishna is seen simply as another manifestation of Viṣṇu, another avataric descent. So much of the theology that constitutes the siddhanta of our Gaudiya Sampradaya will be unpacked here by Jiva Goswami in relationship to this verse, which is the truly a key to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. This is how we see divinity, how it's coming to us. The opportunity is coming to us through this sampradaya, coming through the gracious dispensation of Krishna himself, manifesting and coming into the world as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So much to be gained here from this deep understanding, and much to be gained in seeing it in the perspective of Jiva Goswāmī, which allows us to be firmly rooted in not only the Gaudiya perspective, but the Gaudiya perspective in relationship to other conceptions of spirituality, of divinity that exist in other sampradayas. So with that, we'll stop for today. Certainly be welcome to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I will thank you so much for kind association. Vanchakalpatubhyascha, kripasindubhyeva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavijya namo namaha. Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano Premamritam Manidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priyau Priyakarau Nirmastaram Pujitau Śrī Chaitanya